Former US President Donald Trump is at it again. He's announced a plan to shake up global trade. His target? Countries like South Africa that have a value-added tax or VAT on imports. Trump's plan is simple: charge a tariff equal to their VAT rate. For South Africa, with its 15% VAT, that means a 15% tariff on goods entering the US market. Trump calls it fair and reciprocal. Critics call it a recipe for a trade war. He argues that VAT systems like South Africa's give their local businesses an unfair advantage. American companies exporting to South Africa have to deal with the added cost of VAT. Meanwhile, South African companies face no such burden when selling in the US. This, Trump believes, distorts the market and hurts American jobs. This plan has sent shockwaves through the global trading system. It represents a dramatic departure from the most favored nation status that has governed international trade for decades. Instead, Trump is pushing for a world of bilateral tariffs, where each country negotiates its own deals. The consequences of this move are potentially far-reaching. For countries like South Africa, heavily reliant on trade with the US, the stakes couldn't be higher. South Africa's VAT system has become a lightning rod in Trump's trade offensive. A cornerstone of the country's tax regime, VAT is a consumption tax levied on goods and services at each stage of production and distribution. When goods are imported into South Africa, a 15% VAT is slapped on top of the import price. Trump views this import VAT as a disguised trade barrier. He argues that it artificially inflates the price of American goods entering South Africa, making them less competitive. South African companies, on the other hand, enjoy a price advantage when they export to the US because their goods aren't subject to a similar tax. South African officials counter that their VAT system is perfectly legal under international trade rules. It's a consumption tax, they argue, not a tariff specifically designed to disadvantage foreign companies. Moreover, they point out that many countries around the world, including members of the European Union, have VAT systems similar to South Africa's. The US relies heavily on income tax, while South Africa leans more on consumption taxes, like VAT. This fundamental difference in approach has fueled Trump's perception of unfairness and his determination to level the playing field. The prospect of a 15% tariff on South African exports to the US sends a chill down the spines of businesses across the country. The US is South Africa's second-largest trading partner after China. A tariff of this magnitude could devastate key industries like citrus, wine, and automobiles. These products could become significantly more expensive for American consumers, potentially pricing them out of the market. The automotive sector, a crucial engine of the South African economy, could be hit particularly hard. South Africa exports many vehicles to the US under the African Growth and Opportunity Act, or AGOA. Trump's tariffs threaten to undermine this preferential trade agreement. The impact wouldn't be limited to just these industries. A broad range of South African businesses, from macadamia nut producers to mining equipment manufacturers, rely on exports to the US for their livelihoods. A 15% tariff could force many of these businesses to scale back operations, lay off workers, or even close their doors altogether. The South African government has warned that Trump's tariffs could have a devastating impact on the country's already fragile economy. They have vowed to fight the tariffs at the World Trade Organization, arguing that they violate international trade rules. But with the WTO's dispute settlement system in disarray, it's unclear whether South Africa will find a sympathetic ear. Adding fuel to the fire is the uncertainty surrounding South Africa's participation in the African Growth and Opportunity Act, or AGOA. This preferential trade agreement, enacted in 2000, has been a lifeline for South African exporters, providing duty-free access to the US market for a wide range of goods. AGOA has been credited with boosting South Africa's manufacturing sector, creating jobs, and lifting millions of people out of poverty. But the program is set to expire in September 2025, and its renewal is far from certain. The Trump administration has repeatedly expressed concerns about South Africa's eligibility for AGOA. They point to South Africa's middle-income status, arguing that it no longer needs preferential trade treatment. They also criticize South Africa's close ties with China, Russia, and Iran, countries that the US views as strategic rivals. The South African government has been scrambling to secure AGOA's renewal, arguing that the program remains essential for the country's economic development. But with Trump's America First agenda taking center stage, the future of AGOA hangs in the balance. The prospect of losing AGOA benefits sends shivers down the spines of South African businesses and policymakers alike. The economic consequences could be catastrophic, pushing the country closer to recession and social unrest. Thousands of jobs in the manufacturing sector could vanish overnight. The automotive industry, a major AGOA beneficiary, could be decimated, with ripple effects throughout the economy. Beyond job losses, South Africa's export competitiveness would suffer. Products would face tariffs, making them more expensive for American consumers and less attractive compared to competitors. Losing AGOA could shave off 2% from GDP and push unemployment above 30%, exacerbating poverty and inequality. The South African government is engaging in frantic diplomacy to salvage AGOA. They are lobbying U.S. lawmakers, highlighting the program's benefits for both countries and emphasizing South Africa's commitment to free trade and democracy. But with Trump holding the reins, the fate of AGOA and South Africa's economic future remains uncertain. While the focus has largely been on the potential damage to South African exports, Trump's tariff plan also raises questions about the future of South Africa's import VAT revenue. In the 2023 to 2024 fiscal year, South Africa collected a hefty 263.2 billion rand in import VAT, accounting for 15.2% of its total tax revenue. This revenue stream plays a vital role in funding social programs, infrastructure projects, and other government initiatives. However, a closer look at the figures reveals that the U.S. only contributes a small fraction of South Africa's import VAT revenue. In 2023 to 2024, the U.S. accounted for just 25.4 billion rand, or 7.6% of the total. This pales in comparison to the contributions of China and Germany, which are South Africa's largest and third largest trading partners respectively. Therefore, even if Trump's tariffs were to lead to a significant decline in imports from the U.S., the impact on South Africa's overall import VAT revenue would likely be limited. The South African government could potentially compensate for any shortfall by increasing VAT on goods from other countries or by exploring alternative revenue-generating measures. However, the indirect impact of Trump's tariffs on global trade flows could have more significant implications for South Africa's import VAT revenue in the long run. Trump's tariff plan has ignited a firestorm of controversy, not just in South Africa, but across the globe. Critics accuse him of protectionism, warning that his actions could spark a devastating trade war that would harm economies worldwide. The European Union has threatened to retaliate with tariffs of its own, targeting iconic American products like Harley-Davidson motorcycles and bourbon whiskey. China, too, has vowed to respond in kind, escalating fears of a tit-for-tat trade war between the world's two largest economies. Trump's actions have also strained diplomatic relations between the US and its allies. The G7 summit in Canada descended into acrimony, with Trump launching personal attacks on Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The normally staid world of international diplomacy has been replaced by a more volatile and unpredictable landscape. The potential consequences of a full-blown trade war are dire. Global economic growth could grind to a halt as tariffs drive up prices, disrupt supply chains, and stifle investment. The hardest hit would be developing countries like South Africa, which rely heavily on trade for their economic well-being. The reverberations from Trump's tariff bombshell are being felt far beyond the shores of South Africa. Countries around the world are scrambling to assess the potential impact on their own economies, embracing for a period of heightened trade tensions and uncertainty. India, with its own value-added tax system, could be the next target of Trump's ire. The US and India have already been sparring over trade issues, and Trump's tariff plan could further inflame tensions between the two economic giants. Japan, a key US ally, has also expressed concern about Trump's trade policies. While Japan has so far escaped the brunt of Trump's tariffs, it is heavily reliant on exports to the US, particularly in the automotive and electronics sectors. The European Union, already locked in a trade dispute with the US over steel and aluminum tariffs, is watching the situation with growing alarm. EU officials have warned that Trump's actions could derail transatlantic trade relations and undermine the rules-based international order. The global trading system, once a beacon of cooperation and prosperity, is teetering on the brink. Trump's decision to weaponize tariffs has shattered the post-World War II consensus on free trade, raising the specter of a world divided by protectionism and economic nationalism. As the world holds its breath, the fate of Trump's tariff plan hangs in the balance. The coming months will be crucial in determining whether his gamble pays off or plunges the global economy into chaos. Will Trump's tariffs force other countries to the negotiating table, leading to more favorable trade deals for the US? Or will they spark a tit-for-tat trade war that inflicts pain on all sides, including American consumers and businesses? The stakes are high, not just for the US and its trading partners, but for the future of the global economy. A world divided by protectionism and trade barriers is a world where innovation is stifled, growth is stunted, and prosperity is elusive. As the drama unfolds, one thing is certain: uncertainty reigns supreme. Businesses are delaying investments, consumers are holding back on spending, and policymakers are struggling to navigate the uncharted waters of this new era of trade turbulence. The world watches and waits, hoping for the best but bracing for the worst.